Welcome to the second session of True Life, where we're taking some of life's big questions and thinking how they've been answered down the centuries. The hope is to generate conversations, and in particular, my hope is to put on the table the answers found in the teaching of Jesus and the ancient wisdom of Christianity. Mark Twain is supposed to have said, the two most important days in your life are the day you're born and the day you discover why. And that's our question this time. Why is it we're here? Is there a purpose to life? Is there a meaning to life? Even the way we've sought to answer that question has changed in recent years. In previous generations, our forefathers looked out to discover the purpose of the world. Once we understand why the world is here, the universe is here, we will be able to find our place within it, they thought. But we've been taught rather to look inside. Meaning comes from within, purpose comes from within. It's something to create, not something to receive from out there in the meaning in the universe. You could picture this by looking at two statues in Edinburgh, two statues that are pretty near to each other. The first is John Knox, who was a preacher in the 16th century. He stands there as you might expect, robes flowing, Bible in hand, explaining to the people the meaning that is given to them from above by God. Just around the corner is another statue of David Hume, an atheist philosopher. Hume also is holding something, but it's not a Bible, not even a book. Rather, he's holding two blank slates. The idea is that we fill in the slates ourselves. Hume stands at the fount of a tradition in philosophy that says there is no meaning in the universe. It is up to man and woman to decide for themselves how they should live. To picture this another way, the contemporary philosopher Roger Scruton asked us to think about dancing. In previous generations, he said, dancing was about the individual working out how to fit in with a set routine of steps that were already decided. Perhaps you watched a period drama, a Pride and Prejudice or something, and you've seen the formal way in which people danced. You had to learn the steps in order to fit in. Your purpose was to discover how the group worked and then join. Well, not so now, says Scruton. Now, if you go to a club, you'll see lots of individuals dancing as they want, when they want, how they want. The way Scruton puts it is that we dance at people. It's all about us expressing our individualism rather than conforming to a meaning that is out there already. So what is the purpose? How might we answer this question? In the first session, we spoke about materialists and mystics. Materialists are those who think that all that exists is matter, and therefore as human beings, all we are is meat robots. We're just collections of protons, neutrons and electrons. For the materialist, of course, the answer is there is no purpose. The materialist says, be honest, there is no purpose. The universe itself has no plan or purpose. It began somehow by accident. The Big Bang just happened. There was no plan. And so there's no plan for your life either. No purpose, no meaning. You're just an accident. To quote again Richard Dawkins from the first session, what are we but self-reproducing robots? Samuel Beckett has a play called Breath. You can actually watch it on YouTube. The production put together by Damien Hirst. It begins as the curtains open to show us a stage just strewn with rubbish. There's no rhyme or reason. It's just trash. For about 30 seconds, you hear someone breathing, just a long breath, exhaling, like a sigh. And then after about half a minute, the curtains close. And that's it. Is that all that life is? Are we just cosmic accidents? Cosmic rubbish? Is there no meaning, no purpose? We're just waiting as the breath expires for us until eventually the curtains close on our cold, pointless lives. Well, instinctively, many of us shy away from that understanding. We know somehow deep inside that there is purpose, there is meaning. And this is where mysticism comes in. The mystic says, be creative, invent your own purpose. A few years ago, there was an advert for PlayStation that was actually banned on British TV. But you can see it again on YouTube. And it begins with a baby being born in a maternity ward. The baby shoots out, smashes past the midwife, past the open window, and goes flying off into the air. And over the course of the advert, the baby ages, all the while screaming. So a baby to a toddler, to a child, to a teenager, to a young man, to a middle-aged man, to an older man, until eventually, with grey hair and teeth rotting, he goes smashing into the grave. The screen goes blank. And then the PlayStation logo comes up with the words, "Life is short, play more." It may have been ineffective as an advert, but it's a pretty effective portrayal of hedonism. When we look into the cold reality and see there is no meaning, we might as well distract ourselves with pleasure. So for you, it might not be computer games, it might be sex or drugs or alcohol, but either way, the idea is to just inoculate ourselves against the depressing cold reality of a meaningless universe. For others, hedonism is too superficial, and yet we still feel the need to live for something. David Foster Wallace, the American writer, said this: in the day-to-day trenches of adult life, there is actually no such thing as an atheist. There is no such thing as not worshipping. Everybody worships. The only choice we get is as to what we worship. Now, David Foster Wallace was not religious in any traditional sense. He didn't adhere to any of the great religions of the world. But he was onto something, seeing that all of us have to live our lives in worship. He doesn't mean bowing down in a special building or saying prayers. He means giving our lives to something else, something greater than us. And interestingly, he goes on straight away to lay out the problem. And the problem is, for Foster Wallace at least, the problem of despair. All the things we give our lives to end up crushing us. He puts it like this: pretty much anything else you worship will eat you alive. If you worship money and things, then you'll never have enough. Never feel you have enough. Worship your own body and beauty and sexual allure, and you'll always feel ugly. And when time and age start showing, you'll die a million deaths before they finally plant you. Worship power, you'll feel weak and afraid. You'll need ever more power over others to keep fear at bay. Worship your intellect, being seen as smart. You'll end up feeling stupid. And so on. All these things that we worship, we live for, end up crushing us, says David Foster Wallace. I think it's tremendously insightful. And you see it echoed in those that are most successful in society. Scarlett Johansson was interviewed when she was still in her 20s. And she said this: I think that especially as someone in the public eye, and first and foremost as a woman, it's so difficult to feel comfortable in the body you have. You always want to look a different way. Taller, thinner, whatever it may be. I struggle with it. That's Scarlett Johansson, the movie star, struggling with not being beautiful enough. Or I think of the world of sport. It's fascinating, all these sports documentaries coming out at the moment, and particularly what they reveal about those who absolutely reach the pinnacle, the top of their game. One of those documentaries is called The Edge. It's about the England cricket team who became world champions. And the documentary charts their rise, what they had to go through, the training camps, or sort of SAS-style fitness tests, the brutal fitness regime, the graft, and eventually they make it. And the filmmakers intersperse footage of the captain, Andrew Strauss, lifting this gold mace that they're presented as the number one team in the world, with interviews with the players just shortly afterwards. As you might expect, as they're presented the trophy, the players are bouncing up and down, arm in arm, champagne spraying. But as they look back on it just a year or two later, they're so empty. Strauss himself says this: holding that mace to show a number on the one in the world, it was a bit of an anticlimax. And then he pauses, and he looks down the camera and says, "Is this it?" Tim Bresnan, a good Yorkshireman, is rather more blunt. He just swears and then says, "Now what?" They'd achieved their goal, and yet still they were empty. Similarly, the cyclist Victoria Pendleton, who won Olympic and World Championships, said people always come up to her and say, "Wow, you've achieved all this, 2 World Championship wins and an Olympic gold medal." And I think, yeah, but how come I still feel so unsatisfied? As she describes her experience on the podium, gold medal round her neck at the Olympics, Olympic national anthem playing. Like this, she says, it felt like a complete anticlimax. It was very surreal on the podium. And as soon as I stepped off it, I was like, what on earth am I going to do now? I found it hard to deal with. It was like I've got no purpose anymore. She goes on later in the interview to say, I soon worked out the only thing I could do was to get another gold medal. I need one. See, even succeeding at the projects we give ourselves to isn't enough. It doesn't satisfy. We need more. J.D. Rockefeller, the multimillionaire, was once asked, how much money is enough? And his answer? More. Always just a little bit more. It seems it doesn't matter what you choose to give your life to, what meaning you create, what you write on those blank tablets of David Hume. Ultimately, whether you succeed or fail, David Foster Wallace appears to be right. It'll crush you. And that's perhaps why at the moment, at any one time, 1 in 5 university students are being diagnosed with depression or anxiety. There's been a 5-fold increase in the last decade, according to figures reported in The Independent recently. The Samaritans last year estimated that the suicide rate for women under 25 had increased over 93% since 2012. There's something wrong with our approach to society and life. Again, back to Wallace. He said, on one level, we all know this stuff already. The trick is keeping the truth up front in daily consciousness. It's as if he's saying, look, we just need to go back to distracting ourselves. We know it doesn't work, but we've got to hide somehow. We can't live with the seeming honesty of materialism. There is no meaning. So we invent these stories, but they don't satisfy. And even when they do to small extents, they're still heading towards nothing. H.G. Wells tells a story, or writes a story of the time machine. It's set in late 19th, early 20th century. And a man with this amazing time machine goes to the end of history, forward to the end of time. He opens the doors and looks out, and it's cold and dark and silent. He then goes back to his own day, opens the doors again, and he sees children playing in the street, lovers embracing arm in arm. Musicians are playing, sportsmen are exercising, novelists are scribbling away in the cafes, and he realises it's all going nowhere. It's all heading towards the cold, dark silence. If the universe is meaningless, H.G. Wells is telling us, so too are the little distraction projects we engage with along the way. Was that all we can say? I want to suggest not. There is more. In fact, Wallace himself hints at it a little later in his speech. He says an outstanding reason for choosing some sort of god or spiritual type thing to worship is that pretty much anything else will eat you alive. He seems to grasp, although he's no Christian, that we need to live for something bigger than ourselves, because these other things just eat us alive. Materialism says, be honest, there is no purpose. Mysticism says, be creative, invent a purpose. Christianity says, rejoice, you were made for a purpose. And let me quote some words from Jesus. He said this, come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you'll find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. And what is the purpose of life according to Jesus? Well, it's about coming to him. When we do so, we'll find rest for our souls. That's because Jesus doesn't demand from us. All these other things we worship and live for want to take from us. Try harder, be more beautiful, stay young, be intelligent, succeed, and they crush us. Jesus isn't like that. One of the biggest myths about Christianity is that it's all about being good to impress God, filling up our spiritual report card with enough ticks that he lets us into heaven. Far from it, the Bible is brutally honest. None of us are good, none of us are spiritual. None of us earn our way to heaven and paradise. But God is so kind and gentle and merciful and forgiving that when we come to him and ask, he will forgive us. And therefore there is no pressure. We come to him and rest. We're able to enjoy both him and the gifts he gives us. Of course, Christians, like everybody else, are those who enjoy food and music and sport and family and friends and sex and relationships. They are good gifts from God. But ultimately we enjoy them as just that, not things we have to work hard at to succeed in, but gifts from a Heavenly Father above. And so the greatest pleasure and meaning is enjoying these gifts whilst also thanking the one who gave them. Living our lives for him rather than for ourselves. That's why Jesus says, take my yoke on you. A yoke was something that's kind of harnessed oxen. It was an image of his teaching, his way of life. Come to me and you'll find rest and peace, he said. And therefore the Christianity says to the materialist, you're right, we need to be honest. You're right, we can't just invent meanings. But the good news is the universe does have a purpose. We are here to know the God who made us. And that won't end in a cold, dark, silent universe. We'll end one day in heaven, a gloriously restored physical universe. And Christianity says to the mystic, you're right to sense that we do have a purpose. But you're wrong in thinking we have to invent it. No, rather look outwards, look upwards. The purpose of the universe, the world, and the purpose of you as an individual are the same. You are here to know God, to worship, to live for him, and therefore to enjoy him and all his gifts too. Now that might raise the question, of course, why is the world so difficult? Why is life so hard? And that's the question we'll return to next time.